Well, first of all, how are you coping in the current circumstances, trying to do your job?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Michael. Of course, the circumstances are unique and have brought around significant challenges for us in the academy. But it's been a process of learning and adapting quickly to technology, much like the system we're using now, to ensure we can continue conversing across our staff team and with the players to maximise productivity within the boundaries and constraints we're currently operating under. So keeping well, keeping productive, and it's been a fortuitous as possible time over the past couple of weeks.
The fortuitous thing for us, though, is that we get to meet people like yourself, where perhaps normally we'd be focusing on the final few games of the season. Before we talk about the job you're doing at Lincoln, just give us a brief outline about what you've done before you came to the Imps.
Yeah, so I was really fortunate, Michael, to spend a significant period of time at Loughborough University, which was an absolutely world-class sporting environment where I've learned loads of culture, policy, practice of how the Olympic athletes work and athletes across various sports, their training regimes, how they develop themselves and reach peak performance, and massive period of education for me during that period of time. And then from there, I moved to Luton Town, had 10 really good years there, worked with some fantastic people, and then started at Lincoln City in November.
So how was it?
Yeah,
sorry, I was going to say, how was it you came to Lincoln City? What was it about Lincoln that attracted you?
Yeah, good question. So the academy manager's role came up, and spoke with Jez George, initially the head of football, and he was outlined the vision, where the club was going from both an academy perspective and a wider perspective. And of course, it was well documented at the time, the success that the club was having on the pitch with its rapid rise through the leagues, and how the academy wanted to go with that and be a crucial part of where the club could continue to go and achieve moving forward. So really exciting project. It was an absolute no-brainer. And coming up and meeting the staff and the people, it just felt right, and I knew straight away it was going to be the role and the right club for me to join.
Indeed, and it's a real challenge, isn't it, in football, to not only attract the young players because it's such a competitive market, but then also find a way through from playing as an 8 and 9-year-old and on the AstroTurf to playing at Sincilbank at the age of 21 in front of 10,000. It's not something that so far Lincoln have been particularly successful at doing over a sustained period, and it's quite a task you've got.
Yeah, certainly a difficult task. The club have had to work under some unfortunate restrictions which come about with funding and other areas of income and revenue when you're outside the Football League. So that brings around a whole different set of challenges for an academy. The recent success means, of course, we no longer have to work within them parameters, and it's a time now where hopefully we can go from a period of a little bit of a barren run to being really productive, really supporting Michael and the first team, and hopefully pushing as many players through the academy system and into Michael's squad and onto the pitch at the LNER Stadium as possible.
It must be music to your ears when you hear somebody like the chairman saying the future of the club is to develop players, be it through the academy or be it bringing in from the Premier League clubs like they have done this season, and try and bring them through, because obviously that's the area you're working in. But what is it? How is it that you can try and make that work? I guess the answer could be for an hour and a half now or something, but what are the keys perhaps to trying to make it work?
Yeah, I think it's a multifaceted and complex process, and it changes, Michael, from phase to phase. So of course in the foundation phase, the under 7s to under 11s, they're so far away that they have age-specific coaching program that's centred on enjoyment, making them fall in love with the game, technical mastery. And we've got Lee Moran, who's absolutely fantastic at working with the players in the very youngest age groups and giving them a really good grounding, right the way through to the professional development phase with Tom Shaw coaching the 18s, David Bridges, the head of coaching, where we're trying to identify the skills gaps of the players in our youth team from where they play and how they're developing to the players who are playing in Michael's first team squad. And once we do that and we identify that around whether that's a technical gap, a tactical understanding issue, or a physiological gap, it's about providing really individual bespoke development programs to try and help them bridge the gap so that they can make that transition from youth team to first team football, which of course it's easier said between us here than is done in reality, because it is such a competitive and tough industry, as you allude to.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about bespoke plans, and people might think, oh well, they would say that, but it's really important. I was thinking of somebody who's followed Liverpool, for example. Gerrard, people don't realise, came through at a later age to Michael Owen, who came through at 16, and you could argue, in fact, Michael Owen came through too early because of the injuries he got in the later part of his career. But it is interesting how sometimes some players are ready at 16, some aren't ready until they're 22.
Absolutely, and the human body is a fascinating thing. So, absolutely, young boys will hit their maturation at different ages. So, as you quite rightly referenced there, there'll be some boys who at 16 are fully matured and can cope with the rigorous demands of professional football, and then there'll be some boys where that process will happen further down the chronological timeline for them into their early 20s. And absolutely, with regards finding a bespoke program and pathway, the real skill in the upper age groups is identifying which players are hitting their peak at an earlier age and how we can help develop them a little bit differently to the players who will mature physically, psychologically slightly later, and have a different pathway and a different program that we can still enable all our players to reach their potential.
So how would you judge success? If I said to you, you can have quarter-final, semi-final of the FA Youth Cup, or you can have 4 players in the first team in 5 years' time, which is, or less possibly, but which would you say is more success?
Sure. Look, I suppose the overarching answer is our success is governed by players into the first team. Winning is secondary in our development process, and it's all about making sure that the players we work with can achieve their potential on the pitch. But an academy and a successful academy is so much more than that. So we absolutely know that a really small percentage of the boys that we get to work with will end up as professional players. So equally as important for boys who will go on and have a career in professional football is boys who go on to study higher level degree programs at various education institutions, boys who go to America and exit the football club into US scholarships alongside some really rigorous academic programs, as well as having a really comprehensive, holistic program to develop the boys' life skills and the range of qualities and values they're going to need to be successful people. So we absolutely have an elite edge. We want to get boys in the first team. We want boys to have prolonged careers in professional football, but we have an absolute will and desire to make sure that we help all of the boys we're fortunate enough to coach to be the best they can be in whatever that's going to be in their lives.
And is that the way you make yourself stand out? Because it's a very competitive market, and you and I both know that at 14, if a big Premier League club sees a player, they can start throwing money around in certain ways. So you can't do that at Lincolnshire. You haven't got that sort of a budget. So actually, it's about personalities, people, and how you deal with them, and hope that makes a difference.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, your people are absolutely everything. We're really fortunate, Michael. We have a fantastic group of staff across all the phases. The multidisciplinary staff, the sports science team, the medical team, the analysts, the administration team. So we've got a group of staff who have the best interest of the children at heart, who work really, really well together in terms of collaborating for both the benefit of all the individuals and the continued growth of the academy. So we absolutely have a USP there. We have a fantastic education provision that goes alongside that with our partnership with Lincolnshire School and Rise Home College. And we try not to separate the two, in that we feel better people who strive to achieve the most they can in their education and in their all-round life will generally make better footballers. So we try and combine all them facets to make one global aim and approach for each individual player.
And when you look at the situation with the young players, where's the balance in their overall setup in terms of local players and bringing players in either from overseas or elsewhere in the country? Because you do have at the top age, you've certainly got some players from outside of the region, but I'm assuming that you're trying to improve and bring through and develop more youngsters who are yellow bellies, who are from Lincolnshire.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, we're part of Lincoln City Football Club, so absolutely our first and foremost priority is to develop boys from within Lincolnshire who we can hopefully put on a path to achieving their potential. And then we also can't lose sight of the fact that the success of the football club over recent years means that the standard of player required to get into Michael's first team has improved at a drastic rate. So I think it's a great point. It's Lincolnshire boys first and foremost, and then we have an absolute drive to recruit and bring in players who are of the highest possible quality and highest possible potential that we can sign into the football club. So that includes boys from Ireland, the north and south, and into Europe and across the home nations and throughout the country. So that process generally takes place at under 16 prior to the scholarship years. So we can make sure that we have a stronger group as possible leading into the 17, 18 age group, mainly because the rules prior to that permit you can only sign players within an hour and a half from your training ground. So when that restriction is removed, that's when we start to look a little bit further afield, but only if we don't have a boy already within our own programme who we think we can take to the next level.
One of the real problems whenever I talk to people who work in your field that I hear about is that we've got players, we think we can get them in the first team, but we've got a manager who, frankly, is thinking about 3 points on Saturday, trying to make sure they don't get dragged into a relegation scrap. That's always going to be a stress for Michael Appleton, but it strikes me he is somebody, and that's why he's been appointed, let's be honest about it, who's somebody who sees the benefit of youth and of trying to bring them through and also being backed up by the board saying, this is what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a multifaceted approach, Michael, to that across the football club. So Michael Appleton, the manager, of course, has vast experience in youth development and is a fantastic coach and player developer in his own right, as well as an outstanding manager. So that absolutely helps us in the academy in terms of the pathway and the players seeing what might be further down the line, as well as when they do get the opportunity to go in with Michael, the care, attention and provision that he can give them as a result of his experiences. And David Kerslake and more recently Richie O'Donnell, who also has vast experience in youth development. So we have some outstanding player developers throughout the club, not just in the academy, but also into the first team setup with Jez George as well, overseeing the football department, who again has a huge amount of experience from his roles at previous clubs with creating them pathways between the two, between the academy and between the first team and managing that transition. So it's not something we have to worry about at Lincoln City. We communicate regularly and Michael's been absolutely fantastic for the academy since he came in with both his support, advice and guidance for players and staff.
I don't want to sort of hold a gun to your head or anything like that, but when do you think realistically fans might start to see something of these young players, you know, in and around the first team squad? Are we looking several years down the track realistically?
Yeah, I think that's the crystal ball question. So we have a plethora of exciting young players who are coming through at the minute. The first year scholars who are coming to the end of their first year this year have made excellent progress across the board. So we're really hoping there might be a couple of them next year who can kick on and get closer to Michael's squad and in and around his thinking. And then that depth and quality below is slowly building. We've done a really diligent recruitment process with the 16s this year. So we've got 9 scholars, new scholars who will join us post this pandemic at the moment, whenever that may be, who are really, really exciting players. 3 boys from Lincolnshire who have had a really strong season. So hopefully it's not going to be too far away. And that's up to the boys and the staff to continue working our absolute hardest to make it a possibility.
I guess in the same way that, you know, an athlete getting a gold medal inspires others, you know, and you look at countries and one tennis player starts to play well and the rest of the country seems to suddenly produce tennis players. It's always the first one, isn't it? Get the first one across the line and then people who are the same age as that player or younger can say, oh, well, if he can do it, then I can get in the first team.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom Shaw, our under-18s coach's phrase is that iron sharpens iron. And there's absolutely a drive at the moment to make sure our culture reflects that. We have a really competitive but fair and strong culture with the way we work with the players. And I think you make a great point that, yeah, of course, once one of the boys gets through and gets that opportunity, of course, it inspires those below. And it's, the challenge is there, it's set. Whilst Michael has that fantastic history with his coaching CV of working in youth development, we're under no illusions, and the boys aren't, that they've also got to be good enough to play in his side. So debuts and games won't just be given out, and the challenge is to make sure that we can satisfy them demands.
And Jordan, look, we're clearly living in, as I think I've said it far too many times, extraordinary times, very different sort of times. How do you keep in contact with the players? What are you doing with the players at this stage, and particularly those who maybe are in the county and unless they've perhaps gone home? I don't know, perhaps you can enlighten us on that. I guess there is, to some degree, a mental health issue perhaps for some of them, that if you're a little bit older, 16, 17, 18, if it's going to be as much as 6 months, which is, who knows, we don't know how long it's going to be, but it can feel like a big part of your life and a big part of your potential opportunities are being curtailed at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I think first and foremost, Michael, our priorities are to ensure the emotional well-being and safeguarding of all of the boys. That is paramount in this moment in time. So we've been staying in regular contact via means like we're speaking on now on Zoom to update regularly on how they are, how they're getting on. Provide some really good physical programs and technical development challenges that the boys have been following, as well as, of course, which is paramount for 16, 17-year-old boys, making sure they continue their education, which is a huge focus of the academy at the football club. Them boundaries have shifted now, because much like the several players across the country, the furlough scheme is coming into place. So, but the boys absolutely have to continue their education, which they're doing diligently, and keeping themselves fit and sharp so they can come back in the best possible manner for when we do come out the other side of this current situation.